Throne and Liberty announced some major changes that they're making to their combat, but I still don't trust them. Throne and Liberty recently announced a delay for their Western release into 2024, and the reasoning is to really fine-tune their combat. Combat that was very reviled by people that saw or played the Korean closed beta test. Now, Throne and Liberty, for those who aren't aware, is an MMORPG coming from NCSoft that is going to be published in the West by Amazon Game Studios. It was one of the most hyped games coming into the year, largely because there wasn't really any other games to be hyped about, except maybe Blue Protocol. But there are few games that I have seen take all of that stored up hype, that desperation and need for a new MMO, and completely and utterly destroy it faster than New World's population drop after launch. One of the #1 issues that surfaced when people actually got to play the game was combat. It was roundly criticized, and not just because it was tab-target combat. It was tab-target combat like World of Warcraft, but stationary, like you couldn't move when you were playing, and that kind of felt like a step backward in combat. Tab-target combat is a viable form of combat in an MMORPG. There are several games that have made it be very successful. In fact, the two largest MMOs in the West are tab-target combat MMOs, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. But making it stationary is an entirely different thing. And for a game being presented as combat heavy with next-gen features like dynamic combat impacted by weather, this was understandably hugely disappointing. The reasoning behind making it stationary is really completely beyond me, but it sounds like this is specifically what they're working on and why the game was delayed. My reading of the translations are a bit different than some other outlets that are leaning into this being an action combat change. It feels a little bit less than that. I don't think the game is changing to action combat like Elder Scrolls Online. Rather, I think they're simply rebalancing combat to bring it up to what you'd expect from a traditional tab-target MMORPG, with some added fluff and polish around the edges. As I said, and keep in mind this is translated, so there's always some potential for misunderstandings here, but this is what they said. In the case of the combat system, the response speed has been improved to enable dynamic combat, as well as attacks while moving. But it wasn't just combat that got a footnote for the delay. There was also talk about how slow the grind was in a roundabout way, and how they've improved that, at least early in the game. And improvements have been made by reducing the simple repetitive content and increasing the growth rate so that you can enjoy growth. That's great and all, and perhaps will assuage a lot of concerns for many players. But there's two huge issues that are either not addressed or addressed in a way that's pretty damn concerning. Perhaps the most glaring issue for many Western players wasn't actually the fact that you had to sit still while playing combat. It was the fact that you could just play without actually being present. Lambasted online repeatedly by many, myself included, autoplay features were not mentioned in the Western release delay. Nothing. No mention at all. Now granted, this is not an update from Amazon Game Studios. Instead, it's from NCSoft, the game developer. But for something that was so universally reviled, you'd think that Amazon Game Studios would be keen to come out and say it won't be in the Western release. Initially, I worried that it is something that's just too late to change with the game just around the corner. But if they can alter combat at this late stage, there's no reason why they can't prune out this unwanted feature and balance the game accordingly. That is, of course, unless they just don't want to. And perhaps that's the case, because it might be tied to the final point. The one that we did actually get an update on. A bad one. Pay-to-win issues have reared their ugly head in yet another MMORPG. Now, it's no surprise that Throne and Liberty will be pretty heavily monetized, though the Western release has seen several promises being much more toned down than the Korean version, which should still launch first. Yet, there have also been instances that raise alarm among potential players. Perhaps the most glaring is tied to the auto hunt system, which provided for offline hunting with purchase of a premium battle pass, letting you progress your grind offline by paying extra sounds pretty damn pay to win. Especially in a game with heavy PvP in addition to their PvE. There is a distinct advantage you will be gaining by being able to grind without actually being at the computer. And it's interesting because battle passes are a larger thing to consider when it comes to MMORPGs. They already have kind of a bad reputation in gaming circles, especially when they include tangible gains in the game, like it sounds like this will. It is a uniquely interesting problem for MMORPGs though, because before the advent of the free-to-play MMORPG over a decade ago, they were one of the more heavily monetized genres, as they relied on subscriptions every single month, which usually were around $10 to $15. Battle passes, usually around 3 to 6 months, are going to be cheaper in most cases than what we would have been paying monthly for a subscription to an MMORPG, really just for the right to play it. But I think it is the advent of aggressive monetization across the gaming space, including MMORPGs, that has left many players feeling bitter over the perceived necessity of buying battle passes for games that are marketed as free to play or buy to play. And it doesn't look like Throne and Liberty will be different. The only mention of the business model we got is that it had seen positive feedback. That doesn't bode well for major changes, or at least not ones that will be well received. Questions remain on how much leeway AGS will have to change monetization and how willing they are to do so. I have to believe that if AGS is viewed as the funnel for providing overly monetized MMOs to the Western market, it doesn't look good for their future reputation with a major Lord of the Rings MMO in the works.
You've been officially labeled a disturber of the peace.
Would you trust them to go and play a game if every MMORPG they had launched so far, with the exception of New World, which is pretty fair in its monetization, had major issues with how you're going to pay for the game? Why would you get invested if that is an issue, a really true heart issue for you? But that is the most recent update we have from Throne and Liberty. It is delayed to 2024 so they can make the combat not shit. I still don't know that this game will be anything more than an MMO tourist destination, which is sad to say when the game has been in development for really about over a decade, if you count going all the way back to when it was a completely different project that was going to be top down, and when it was Lineage Eternal. But before it actually launches in the West, we should be getting a beta test from the Western release from Amazon Game Studios, and you can actually sign up for those tests in the link I provided down below if you want to try and get into the game and see what it's about before it actually gets here, and perhaps add some of that very, very necessary feedback on some of these issues that could cause the game to really crater when it gets here. If you want more details on Throne and Liberty, I covered it extensively in several videos on this channel, like this one right here. My name is Redbeard Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Man, this is... can we get an MMO that's just objectively good, please? I'm gonna go play some Baldur's Gate 3.